So when we hear or think of ego, personality, and soul, we see us in all of it. Our ambitions, passions, fears, struggles, desires, character traits, and even the deepest depths of our psyche. We call all of it our self. And when we refer to ourselves, have you ever noticed we always point to the heart, not the head, not anywhere else? And this is, we intuitively know there's something so special about the heart, not only as an organ, even this is so fascinating, but we see in our heart not only the self, but the deepest essence of our being, our soul. And so in an ancient Hermetic text, it is said, direct your heart to the light and know it. So, and you might think, well, this all sounds very nice, but what is actually meant with that? How would we do it? Or are we even able to do this? In ancient times, the heart was also called the sanctuary of love. And this referred to a state of being of true omnipresent life, of an all-encompassing love. And we probably all agree that this state of being, of love, cannot be reached or not even comprehended in our familiar state of I-centrality. It cannot be found in our world, in our life field. This love belongs to another life field, to the universal, eternal, or divine realm, because this love is the spirit, is God. So, as we all agree, our heart, our state of being is definitely no longer a sanctuary of love. And our heart, our soul is the state of it. It's determined by our way of life, the present, but also the past and even karmic influences, which was explained a little in a bit more detail last week. And our heart, our soul, it's impure. It's a battlefield of conflicting emotions. It's filled with fear and desire, struggle for control. There's no lasting harmony, no true love, because everything always changes. We might have or think we have it, and then it slips away again or even turns into its opposite. So we basically feel tossed around by outer circumstances, but especially by inner circumstances, what we have within us. And if you look at ourselves or at our beings, we are basically or mostly focused just on the maintenance of our existence on all levels. But there is something within us that seeks for something else, that knows that there is something else. And this is way beyond, it's beyond our ego. It's beyond all these daily struggles of life. This is this radiation of this one spark within us, in our heart, that actually belongs to the light, to this true love that was mentioned earlier. And this is the spark of God. It's not part of our ego, so I cannot in no way connect to it, not as an I or with an I consciousness. So if we follow this inner longing, this what we have within us, this inner knowing that originates from this spark, then over time, there's a change in our heart, in our being. So we become open to this radiation of the spirit. And this radiation, it is powerful. It, over time, it will be able to purify our heart, our entire state of being. It will be affected by us. So our thinking, our feeling, everything over time, it's a process. And this, now I would like to bring it back to the earlier quote, because this is also how to understand this quote. And this is how we begin to direct our heart upon the light and know it by becoming open to this inner spark. So we all have this possibility within us, and so this gives us a choice. We can direct our heart or our soul towards the I, the ego, and serve only the self, or mostly the self-maintenance of our existence. Or we make the decision that we want to try to begin to direct our heart towards the light and begin to serve the divine essence within us. But to make this choice, we need to understand better that those two different ways of focus of life, we have to understand them a little bit more. So, and now Kevin will continue and explain a little bit more about our familiar state of being, the soul of, or we would call it the soul that is of this nature order.
The natural soul is a concept that refers to the life stream that animates human beings. It is the central driving principle in us, and it is active in various systems in our body, such as blood, hormonal, nervous, spinal system, also in our consciousness and even in our subconsciousness. The soul is said to be the ultimate animating principle by which we think and feel, but isn't dependent on our body. It is a structure that consists of astral and etheric forces, which give the body various characteristics of life. The soul can even be called electromagnetic due to its structure of force lines and ability to attract and repel. The life animated by soul reveals itself as a dynamic process, making itself known in our thinking, feeling, willing, and acting. Our reactions to external influences are determined by our needs, problems, and by what we perceive to be our goal in life. Psychology is the scientific study of a human mind and its functions, especially those affecting behavior in a given context. We could also describe it as a way to understand our soul, the essence of our being. But even though it offers great help and deeper insight into the philosophical and mental state of our I, it can only describe the soul that is a part of this familiar life of transiency, but never the life field of the one spark in the divine within our hearts. Also, all attempts of psychology to unravel the unconscious mind, also known as subconsciousness, can only delve into the parts of our being that belong to the familiar life field of this transient nature. Even though unconscious, they are still part of our I. We may be able to find insights or inspiration and creativity there because our unconscious mind is connected to our suppressed emotions, past experiences, and even karma. But we can never find the true eternal essence of our being in the unconscious aspects of our I. The divine, eternal spark in our heart is not part of our I and does not belong of this transient world. It is like a faint, steady voice within us that is always there, calling us and patiently waiting. And now Wolfgang will cover a little bit more on the role of the ego. So it's up to you, Wolfgang.
Yes, this faint voice that's in us, and we're not hearing it, or our ego is not hearing it, or our ego is drowning it out with all its activity, and so on. And the ego governs our personality system, and therefore it overpowers everything. So now the ego belongs to the world of the opposites. So it belongs to this physical body as a finer system. And as a task, it governs the whole system and makes us function in the world. And therefore, it's not really bad. It just is what it is. And it's doing its thing for that, but it's not really helping us move forward. And so to explain this a little further, I have a little picture and a little story for you. You see a coach with horses and a driver, and each one of them symbolize something. So you start with the horses. They represent the will, the desires, the emotions, and the thinking. And the coach driver, he holds on to the reins. So the horses cannot really hear or follow any other lead other than the one who holds the reins. And who holds the reins is our ego. And the ego has been driving around with this coach for a long time with its own interests. And maybe it is even lost. And so that's it's sort of stuck in a way. And the carriage or the coach is like our personality system, and the ego is the driver. So while this is all not really bad, there is yet the passenger inside, and maybe the ego elbowed the passenger back to his seat and won't listen to him. And the passenger is our soul, is that faint voice calling us within, but the coach driver isn't listening. And so he's running around the world and not really getting anywhere. So to make it short, the ego, after a long while of running around, will maybe realize that he's a bit lost, and maybe he will open up a little bit and listen to the passenger in the back, that faint voice that knows where to go, or at least has the intuition where to go, that pre-remembrance. And so the ego at a certain point will realize that it has a choice. Does it feed itself? Does it only push through the world with its own ideas? Or will it let that passenger have a say in life? And so again, the ego, we have a choice. And maybe after that, the ego can hear that faint voice. So there you go. yeah, next slide, please.
Finally, I understand that there is only one solution. God is love, as a fixed point in the center of everything. Therefore, also in the center of a human being, in the heart, dwells the God within that I know as love. Can you feel from time to time who's driving your carriage? Can you tell if the ego is still holding the reins or if the soul has a chance to voice its own desires? The ego, of course, is this, as Wolfgang described, is the self-maintaining driver, whereas the new soul consciousness, a soul directed upon the light and upon love, is trying to change the direction to go back and join the original light, the divine light. A well-known 19th century German writer and natural philosophy, Goethe, wrote in his famous work, Faust, "Two souls are dwelling, alas, in my breast. The one wants to separate from the other." And with these words, Goethe described precisely the situation, the choice that we still face today. There are two souls living in my breast. There are two entities trying to drive this carriage. Which one do we choose? We're well aware of the one soul, the one that is of the earth, the world of transient phenomena, of change. The second soul is the new soul that's waiting to be awakened so that we may become conscious of the divine field of life which surrounds us. This divine field of life is everywhere. It's always offering itself to us. But we have to make some changes in our own being in order to be on the same wavelength, should we say, with this light, with this love. The new soul starts to develop out of the spiritual nucleus in the heart, the spirit spark, which we spoke about earlier. The last memory or the remnant of the soul state that used to be connected to this divine field of life, to this divine impersonal love that offers itself. This nucleus is waiting and has been waiting for a very long time for the moment when the ego is willing to relinquish its control over the soul and the connection to the spirit can be reestablished, the connection to love, to divine life, which again is everywhere. This new connection is the call that resounds in the heart that has become quiet, in an opened heart. The new soul is the intermediary, the connecting link between us and the eternal being, the potential eternal being that has its nucleus hidden in us. The heart can become open in a process. The thinking will also be affected so that our entire consciousness participates in the process. And this will be described further in the public talk next Sunday. The thinking will also be affected, as I said. Connecting the new soul comes as a grace. We can't pull it out. We can't tease it out or force it out by thinking. It comes as a grace to a heart that is devoted to love, and love in the divine sense. When the ego steps out of the way, when the ego lets go of the reins or listens to the soul in the carriage for directions where it would like to go. So with all these images, what choice will we make? And we'd like to leave you with one more story about choices. A Cherokee grandfather is talking with his grandson. The grandfather says, "In life, there are two wolves inside of us, and there's a battle between them. One is a good wolf, which represents things like kindness, bravery, and love. The other is a bad wolf, which represents things like greed, hatred, and fear." And the grandson thinks about this for a few minutes, and then he asks his grandfather, "Grandfather, which one will win?" And the grandfather replies, "The one that you feed."